I never thought my daughter-in-law could do something like this. But there I was, standing in the middle of my living room, surrounded by empty spaces and the remnants of my life. My name is Carol Martin, and I'm 62 years old. I've spent my entire life raising my children, caring for my family, and building a home that I thought would last forever. But that night everything changed. I had always prided myself on being a good mother, a loving wife, and a devoted grandmother. I worked hard to keep my family together, to make sure everyone was happy. But my daughter-in-law Diana had a different plan. It was just a regular evening when I first noticed something strange. The house felt quieter than usual, and when I walked through the rooms, I saw things that didn't belong in their usual places. My prized antique chair was gone. The silverware my husband and I had collected over the years had vanished. My heart sank as I realized what was happening. Diana had been slowly selling off everything I held dear. I had always trusted her, always believed she was part of the family. But this betrayal, this act of heartlessness shattered that trust. I tried to keep my composure, but the shock of it hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just the possessions that hurt. It was the realization that my own family, the people I had sacrificed so much for, no longer cared. I had given everything to them, and in return they took what they wanted without a second thought. I stood there for a moment, the weight of it all pressing down on me. Diana's cold, calculating smile flashed in my mind. She had been planning this for months, if not longer. She had taken everything I loved, and for what? To make room for her own greed. I wanted to scream, to confront her, but I knew that would only make things worse. So I stayed silent, watching as the empty spaces in my home grew larger, reflecting the emptiness I felt inside. That night, after the last of the furniture was gone, I sat in the corner of my living room, unable to understand how this had happened. How could my daughter-in-law, someone I had welcomed into my home, do something so cruel? And yet it was happening. The police knocked on the door later that evening, and that's when the truth started to unravel. It wasn't just the theft. It was the lies, the manipulation, and the calculated plan Diana had put in motion. I never expected that my family could turn on me this way. But now I had no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. I couldn't believe it. The house was quiet, too quiet. It had been a few days since the police came by, and I was still trying to process what had happened. The officers had looked at me with pity, as though they could see the heartbreak on my face. It wasn't just the loss of the items, the family heirlooms, or the furniture my husband and I had picked out together. It was something deeper. Something that hit me where it hurt the most. My own family had betrayed me. I couldn't understand how Diana, my daughter-in-law, could be so cold, so heartless. She had always been so sweet to my face, smiling and pretending to care. But now it was all so clear. I remembered when she first joined our family. She was young, eager, and I welcomed her with open arms. I treated her like a daughter, helping her with everything from decorating their home to watching the kids while she worked. I never imagined that the woman I had trusted would be the one to stab me in the back. I had noticed her change in behavior over the past few months. She was distant, aloof, and there was always this coldness in her eyes whenever I spoke. But I told myself it was just stress, or maybe she was just busy with her own life. I had no idea that she was slowly planning to take everything from me. When I saw the empty spaces where my precious things once were, it was as if I had been hit with 1,000 blows. Each empty corner of the house reminded me of how empty I felt inside. I had worked my entire life for this home, for my family, and now it felt like it was all slipping away. The hardest part was knowing that my own son, my flesh and blood, had stood by and allowed it to happen. I had always been there for him, supporting him through every difficult moment, every failure, every success. And now when I needed him the most, he chose to side with her. I thought back to the day Diana had told me she was going to sell everything. "It's too much for you to handle, Carol," she had said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You're getting older, and this house is just too much. It's time for you to move on." I stood there in disbelief, trying to make sense of her words. How had it come to this? I thought I had raised my son to be a man who would stand by his mother, who would protect me the way I had protected him. But instead, he had let Diana take everything I loved without a second thought. It was too much to bear. I couldn't stay in this house any longer, surrounded by the memories of a family that had betrayed me. I had to leave, but I wasn't going to leave without a fight. I had given them everything, and now it was time for me to take something back. I couldn't help but sit in silence that night, reflecting on how everything had spiraled out of control so quickly. The weight of betrayal hung heavily in the air. It wasn't just about the furniture or the jewelry. It was the realization that the family I had loved and cared for had turned against me. My heart ached, not just for the things that had been taken, but for the love I had given that had been so easily discarded. I had spent my life building a home for my children, for my family, and now it felt like all of that was being erased. I thought about all the years I had spent supporting my son, raising him to be the man he was today. I thought about the countless sacrifices I made to make sure he had everything he needed. And now here I was, facing the harsh reality that he had chosen his wife over me. Diana, the woman I had welcomed into my home and treated like my own daughter, had gone behind my back and sold everything. The realization hit me harder than I expected. How could I have been so blind? How had I missed the signs? I remembered the little things, the coldness in Diana's voice when she spoke to me, the way she dismissed me when I asked about anything. I had chalked it up to stress or fatigue, but now I could see it for what it truly was: manipulation, deceit, and a complete lack of regard for me. It was as though everything I had done for her, everything I had given to her, had meant nothing. She had made it clear that I was no longer welcome, no longer needed in her life. The sadness that followed was suffocating. But somewhere deep inside me, I knew I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let Diana get away with destroying everything I had worked for. That night, as I sat alone in the emptiness of my home, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them continue to walk all over me. I would take back control no matter what it took. I would make sure Diana and everyone else who had betrayed me knew that I wouldn't be silenced. The first step was to figure out how to get my things back, and I wasn't going to waste any more time being passive. It was time for me to stand up for myself. The thought of confronting Diana made my stomach twist with anxiety, but I knew it was something I had to do. I couldn't allow this betrayal to define me. I would reclaim my dignity, my belongings, and my life. I wasn't going to let them win. The next few days felt like a blur. I had made up my mind. There was no turning back. I couldn't let Diana get away with this any longer. But how was I supposed to face her? The woman who had once been so close, so seemingly grateful for everything I did for her, had become a stranger. Every time I thought about the betrayal, a heavy weight pressed on my chest. I had to act, but I didn't know where to start. The silence in my home was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own thoughts. The furniture that was once part of this house, part of my life, was gone. Every inch of space seemed to mock me. I walked through each room, feeling like a stranger in my own home. My husband had been gone for over a year now, and I had thought that with time the loneliness would ease. But now it felt like the walls were closing in. My son, whom I had raised with all my love, had sided with his wife. I couldn't understand how he could just let her destroy everything. Every conversation we had, every moment we shared, had led me to this point, and now there was nothing left to say. But I wasn't going to let this go. I had raised a family, I had built a life, and I wasn't going to let it slip away without a fight. The first step was clear. I needed to get the authorities involved. I had to take action, but I couldn't let myself get caught up in emotions. I had to think clearly, carefully. I couldn't let Diana have the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. So I made the call. I reached out to a lawyer who could help me figure out what to do next. I wasn't sure what the next steps would be, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. Diana thought she could take everything from me, but she was wrong. She underestimated me. I was stronger than she realized. And soon she would see just how far I was willing to go to get back what was mine. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound sense of determination. I had spent so much time in grief and disbelief that I had nearly forgotten who I was before all of this. But now, as I sat in my quiet home, I remembered something important. I was Carol Martin, and I had survived far worse than this. This wasn't the end for me. It was just another chapter. I had spent years taking care of everyone else, sacrificing my own needs for the sake of my family. But now it was time for me to put myself first. The phone call to the lawyer was the first step in taking back control. I wasn't going to let Diana or anyone else steal from me again. I didn't need to scream or yell to make a point. I just needed to be calm and collected, and that was exactly what I was going to do. When the lawyer answered the phone, his voice was calm and professional, a sharp contrast to the storm that had been brewing in my heart for weeks. "Miss Martin, how can I assist you today?" he asked. I took a deep breath and explained everything. The stolen furniture, the deceit, the betrayal from Diana. I didn't leave anything out, not a single detail. The more I spoke, the clearer it became. I wasn't the helpless victim in this story. I was taking charge. The lawyer assured me that there were steps we could take. Legal action if necessary. But more importantly, he promised me that I wouldn't have to go through this alone. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe there was still a way to get justice. Maybe there was still a way to reclaim what was mine. After the call ended, I sat for a moment, letting the words sink in. This wasn't going to be easy, and I knew that. But I had fought too hard for too long to let this slip through my fingers. I had lost my husband, I had been betrayed by my son and daughter-in-law, and now I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. It wasn't just about the things they had stolen. It was about respect, dignity, and reclaiming the life I had built. I wasn't going to be the quiet, passive woman they thought I was anymore. I was going to make sure they knew that Carol Martin was not someone to be taken lightly. I had spent so many years caring for everyone else, always putting their needs before my own. But now I was beginning to understand that it was time to stand up for myself. I had taken the first step by reaching out to the lawyer, but I knew there was so much more I needed to do. It wasn't just about recovering what had been stolen from me. It was about making sure that Diana understood the consequences of her actions. She couldn't just take everything from me and walk away without facing the reality of what she had done. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, documenting every missing item, every detail of the betrayal. I didn't want to be the victim anymore. I wanted to take control of the situation, and that meant being prepared. I had spent too many years trusting people, giving them my love and my loyalty, only to be betrayed. Diana had taken everything from me, but she hadn't taken my strength. I was still here. I was still fighting. As I sat at my kitchen table, organizing the paperwork and notes I had gathered, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. This wasn't just about getting my possessions back. It was about reclaiming my power. I had given so much to my family, and now it was time for me to take back what was mine, not just in terms of material things, but in terms of respect, dignity, and control over my own life. I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all Diana, take that from me. It wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. There would be challenges, obstacles, and moments where I would feel weak. But I also knew that I had the strength to overcome whatever came my way. I had survived far worse in my life. And this was nothing compared to what I had already been through. Diana thought she could push me around, take everything I loved, and walk away with no consequences. But she was wrong. I was stronger than she could ever imagine. As the days passed, I continued to work with my lawyer, strategizing our next steps. The more I learned about my options, the more determined I became. I wasn't just going to let this slide. I was going to fight for everything I had worked for, and I was going to make sure Diana paid for what she had done. I spent the next few days meticulously preparing for what was to come. I knew that the next step in this fight was not going to be easy. Diana had already proven that she was capable of doing whatever it took to get what she wanted, and I had to be just as determined. I spent hours at my kitchen table going over every document, every piece of evidence, making sure I had everything in order. My lawyer had been helpful, but it was clear that this battle was going to require every ounce of strength I had left. As I sat there, looking through the photographs of the missing furniture and items, I realized something. This wasn't just about getting back what was stolen from me. It was about showing my family that I would no longer be a passive observer in my own life. I had spent so many years serving others, always putting my family's needs before my own. But now it was time for me to stand up for myself. Diana had thought she could take everything without consequence, but she had underestimated me. The weight of the situation felt heavy, but it also filled me with a sense of purpose. I was no longer just a mother or a wife. I was a woman who had endured far too much and had come out the other side stronger. I was ready to face whatever came next. I had a plan, and I was going to execute it with precision. Diana had tried to tear apart everything I had worked for, but she was going to see that I wasn't so easily broken. The next few days were a blur of meetings and phone calls with my lawyer. It was all moving fast now, and the sense of urgency pushed me forward. I couldn't waste time dwelling on the past. I had to focus on the future, on what was next. There was still so much to be done, and I wasn't about to let anyone stop me now. When the day came for the next step, I felt a strange sense of calm. I wasn't nervous anymore. I was ready. I had been through worse. I had survived more than most people could ever imagine. And now it was time for me to take back control of my life. The days seemed to stretch on, but my resolve only grew stronger. I had gathered everything I needed: the evidence, the plan, and the courage to follow through. Diana had no idea what she had unleashed, and now it was time for me to take action. I had spent so long feeling like a victim, but not anymore. I was no longer just Carol Martin, the woman who gave everything to her family. I was someone who was going to take back what was rightfully mine. I wasn't afraid anymore. When the day finally arrived to confront Diana, I knew it wasn't just about getting my belongings back. It was about standing up for myself, showing that I wouldn't be trampled on. Diana thought she could strip me of everything, but she had forgotten one thing. I still had my strength. I had been knocked down, but I wasn't out. The confrontation was looming. I could feel the tension building as I walked through the house, each step bringing me closer to the moment when everything would change. Diana would no longer have the upper hand. I wasn't going to let her control this narrative any longer. The knock on the door startled me. My heart skipped a beat, but I held my ground. It was time. Diana was standing there, her expression unreadable, as if she had no idea what was coming. I could feel the weight of the moment hanging in the air. The power had shifted, and now it was my turn to take control. I opened the door and looked her in the eyes. There was no anger, no hatred in my gaze, just a calm determination that seemed to unnerve her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady, unwavering. Diana's eyes flickered for a moment, but she didn't speak. She knew deep down that this was the moment she had been dreading. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. "You took everything from me," I continued, my voice quiet but firm. "But I'm taking it back." Diana didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked away, avoiding my gaze. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but it was too late. The truth was out, and she couldn't escape it. I had come prepared. I had all the documents, all the proof I needed. Diana had thought I was weak, but she had underestimated me. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to lose. The silence between us stretched on, thick with unspoken words. Diana stood there, visibly uncomfortable, her usual confidence replaced by a nervous tension. She knew what was coming, but she wasn't ready to face it. I could see the uncertainty flickering in her eyes, a stark contrast to the woman who had taken so much from me. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me any longer. I stood my ground, refusing to let her off the hook. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I asked, my voice steady but firm. Diana looked away, clearly unwilling to face the truth. "You've taken everything I had. The furniture, the heirlooms, the things my husband and I worked so hard for," I continued, not backing down. "But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that you've betrayed me. You've lied to my face, and you've done it all without a second thought." She shifted uncomfortably, her hands wringing at her sides. I could see her preparing some sort of excuse, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. "You can't just take from people and walk away, Diana," I said, the calm in my voice masking the storm inside me. "I'm not going to let you get away with this. Not anymore." Diana's face flushed, and she opened her mouth as if to say something, but the words caught in her throat. I wasn't about to give her the chance to spin this around. "I've spent my life helping this family, giving everything I had. But you've taken that for granted. And now I'm taking it back." The weight of my words hung in the air between us. For a moment Diana said nothing, her face a mixture of guilt and defiance. I could see her trying to formulate a response, but there was nothing she could say to justify her actions. I wasn't the same woman she had manipulated before. I was stronger now, and I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. The police were already involved, and I had the documents to back up everything I had said. Diana had underestimated me. She thought I was weak, but she was about to learn that I was anything but. This was my time, and I wasn't going to let her or anyone else take that away from me. The moment hung in the air, charged with tension. Diana was no longer the confident woman she had been when this all started. She was quieter now, her eyes darting away from mine as I spoke. The facade was slipping, and I could see the cracks in her armor. But I wasn't going to back down. I had made a promise to myself and I was going to see it through. You thought you could take everything from me and get away with it. I continued, my voice calm but resolute. But I'm not letting that happen. Diana shifted uncomfortably, her face paling as I stood there, unwavering. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I could feel the shift in the room. The power had changed hands. She had spent so long trying to manipulate me, trying to control the narrative, but now it was my turn to set the rules. You've taken my things, you've lied to me, and you've pushed me aside, I said, letting the words sink in. But you can't take my dignity. You can't take my will to fight back. The silence stretched between us, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. It was subtle, but it was there. She knew she had pushed me too far. She knew she had underestimated me. I wasn't the quiet, passive woman she thought I was. I had lived through so much, and I wasn't going to let her tear me down. I'm not going to let you destroy everything I've worked for, I said, my voice steady. I'm going to fight for what's mine. And you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions. Diana didn't respond. She just stood there, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to process what was happening. I could see the realization dawning on her. She had crossed a line, and now there was no turning back. I've already taken the necessary steps, I added, my heart pounding in my chest. The lawyer is handling things and the police are involved. This isn't just about furniture or money. This is about respect. This is about standing up for myself. Diana opened her mouth again, but no words came out. She couldn't argue with that. She couldn't deny the truth that was now out in the open. I had finally taken control, and she had no choice but to accept it. As the days passed, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of empowerment. The phone calls with my lawyer had become more frequent, and with each conversation, I felt more in control of my own fate. Diana had spent so long thinking she could manipulate me, take everything from me without facing the consequences, but now she was learning that I wasn't the same person I used to be. I had spent so many years putting others first, letting myself become invisible in the background of my own life. But no more. I wasn't just fighting for the things she took from me. I was fighting for my dignity, my peace of mind, and for the respect I deserved. The police had taken my claims seriously, and the evidence was mounting against her. I wasn't just the grieving mother or the quiet wife anymore. I was Carol Martin, a woman who had been wronged, but who was determined to make things right. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. Diana wasn't going to give up without a fight, and she would do everything in her power to avoid the consequences of her actions. But that didn't matter to me anymore. I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Every day, as I worked through the legal process and spoke with the authorities, I felt a sense of clarity that I hadn't felt in years. This was the fight of my life, but it wasn't just about getting back what she took from me. It was about reclaiming my life, my voice, and my sense of self-worth. I had spent too long living in the shadows, and now it was my time to step into the light. The thought of facing Diana again made my heart race, but I was no longer afraid. I was prepared. She had underestimated me, and now she was going to see just how strong I really was. I wasn't going to be silenced anymore. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me or take away the life I had built. This was my moment and I was going to take it. The day finally came when everything I had worked for was about to be put into motion. I had prepared myself for this moment, and as I stood at the door, ready to face Diana once more, I could feel the weight of everything that had led up to this. The legal proceedings were in motion, and the truth was no longer something she could hide. I had spent so many years caring for everyone else, but now I was standing up for myself. This wasn't just about the things she took. It was about reclaiming my power, my life, and my dignity. As I stepped out of my house, I could feel the strength in my steps, the confidence that had been missing for so long. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had been through too much and I wasn't about to back down now. Diana had thought she could manipulate me, control me, and take everything without any consequences. But now the tables had turned. I was the one in control, and it was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Diana wasn't going to give up without a fight. But the truth was on my side, and that was all I needed. The lawyer had assured me that we had a strong case, and the police had already started their investigation. It wasn't just about the furniture or the stolen items anymore. It was about justice, about standing up for what was right. As I walked into the lawyer's office, I couldn't help but think about all the moments I had let pass by without speaking up. The years of silence, the times I had put others first, and the moments when I had let Diana manipulate me into believing I had no choice but to accept her behavior. But that was over. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else treat me like that anymore. The fight wasn't just for the things she had taken. It was for the respect I deserved. It was for my peace of mind. It was for my life. Diana would have to answer for what she did. And as I sat down across from my lawyer, I knew that this was the beginning of the end of the battle. I had fought long enough, and now it was time for her to pay for what she had taken from me.